Vietnamese government ready to approve enterprises' proposals. And European CEO shares insight on FDI into Vietnam during pandemic time. Hello and welcome to this edition of Bizline brought to you by VTV International. You with me, Lina Pham. And as usual, we'll begin our program by reviewing the economic highlights over the past week.
Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính had a working session with the head of the delegation of the European, ambassadors of the EU countries, the European Chamber of Commerce, EuroCham, and multiple European businesses in Vietnam on Thursday. The meeting aimed to seek measures to better support the business community amid the pandemic. Empathizing with the difficulties that the pandemic has caused for the business community, Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính affirmed that the Vietnamese government is always ready to foster conditions for EU enterprises to invest and do business in Vietnam. The Vietnamese government is also implementing numerous solutions to control the pandemic and deal with obstacles encountered by businesses, and recently introduced a new resolution to help businesses, cooperatives, and business households adapt to the ongoing pandemic. With the proposals of ambassadors and leaders of a number of EU businesses, the Prime Minister and leaders of ministries sectors have directly responded with a number of solutions included in the recently introduced resolution. With an emphasis on the two sides sharing the risks and benefits, the Vietnamese government will continue to receive feedback and respond to reasonable demands.
According to Adam Sikoff, Executive Director of American Chamber of Commerce in Hanoi, even amid supply chain and shutdown problems due to COVID, Vietnam continues to become a more important piece of the global supply chain, especially for goods that affect American consumers. The country has implemented stringent travel restrictions in Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi for several months, and Sikoff still expects Vietnam to attract investment, including from further relocations out of China. Analysts at Australia and New Zealand banking group also said that the pandemic has not changed Vietnam's attractiveness as a manufacturing hub, and that there's ample room for policy support for future economic recovery further.
In the first 8 months of this year, state budget revenue increased compared to the same period last year. However, in recent months, it's decreased gradually. According to a new report by the Ministry of Finance, state budget revenue in the first 8 months of this year is estimated at nearly $44 billion, equivalent to more than 74% of the estimate and up by more than 14% over the same period last year. Despite the increased budget revenue, especially domestic revenue, has witnessed a decline in recent months. In order to fulfill the task of collecting the state budget this year, the Ministry of Finance said it has directed tax and customs authorities to better manage tax collection and combat revenue loss, commercial fraud, and tax evasion in the final months of this year.
According to Vietnam Steel Association, steel enterprises have boosted exports while facing difficulties in domestic consumption due to COVID-19 outbreak. The association says steel production in July reached nearly 2.4 million tons, down 6.48% compared to the previous month, while steel consumption was about 2.1 million tons, the same volume in June, and up 7.4% year-on-year. Due to the difficulty in steel product consumption in the domestic market, steel enterprises have promoted steel exports to maintain production, of which steel export reached 658,000 tons, an increase of 5.96% month-on-month and 55% year-on-year. However, industry insiders believe domestic consumption and steel exports could recover further by the end of this year if the pandemic is controlled well at home and abroad.
Despite facing the complicated developments of the COVID-19 pandemic, there remain bright spots for local agricultural exports such as cashew nuts, pepper, rubber, rice, and coffee to the Turkish market, according to the Vietnamese Trade Office in Turkey. Vietnam took the lead in terms of cashew nut exports to Turkey, accounting for approximately 94% of the overall market share of cashew exports to this market during the first half of the year. The country exported a total of 4,600 tons of cashew, worth almost $16.5 million to Turkey throughout the review period, representing a rise of 52.8% in volume. Furthermore, the country continues to retain its leading position in pepper exports to Turkey, with over 2,200 tons worth more than $4.3 million during the 6-month period.
According to data from the Ministry of Planning and Investment as of July the 20th, 2021, the total registered foreign direct investment, or FDI, capital reached $16.7 billion, down 11.1% over the same period last year. This is the strongest decrease since the COVID-19 pandemic broke out in late April 2021 in Vietnam. So in this edition of Bizline, we would focus on analyzing the data, listening to FDI businesses' inner thoughts, proposals, and solutions from both the government and the FDI sector to keep production safe and fix the disruption of the supply chain. And to do that, I sat down with Mr. Thomas Bo Pedersen, CEO of Mascot Vietnam and Laos, one of the biggest workwear companies in Europe. He went back to Denmark for holiday, but immediately when he heard the fourth wave of COVID-19 broke out in Vietnam, he made an unusual decision, which is to come back here. And we're lucky to have him in our crosstalk to find out more about his decision. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Thomas Pedersen, for joining our program today. You just came back to Vietnam 3 weeks ago. Tell us about the experience.
I had anticipated that maybe landing in Noi Bai after midnight would be a headache. It took me 30 seconds to get through health immigration because I had downloaded the QR code. So all I needed to do was to flash that. It took me less than 5 minutes to get through immigration. Both was a big surprise to me.
You decided to travel back to Denmark, and then when the COVID-19, the fourth wave of COVID-19 broke out in Vietnam, you decided to go back to Vietnam. Why so?
I do have a responsibility here. In Vietnam and Laos, I'm responsible for the well-being of almost 3,000 people. It was my job to be here with them. I came back fully vaccinated, so I didn't see any personal risk in coming back. And one more thing, Vietnam la quê hương tu hai của tôi.
So how is it working from home?
In spite of the difficulties, we have no problems in running the company. Our production units are in Hai Duong, as you know, was a hot spot during the previous wave, but they have no negative impact on our production capacity. We are running fully normal. Our supply chain to Laos, where we have a big factory, which is also very important for us, is running completely normal. We get containers over the border back and forth every week without any issue. Myself, I'm spending all of my time here in my residence, and you could say I'm managing the company by iPad.
Tell me more about the strategy of the company to keep the working environment safe in Hai Duong factory.
When it comes to the daily preventive measures, I mean, once you have bought the partitions, once you have set up the routines, then, I mean, your running costs are pretty much down to the face masks. Where it becomes tricky, and we are not in that situation yet because we have not been ordered to implement 3S. Our workers that are resident in Hai Duong, they can go to the factory and back to their homes. Whereas those of our staff in Hai Duong that are residing elsewhere in Hanoi or Bac Ninh or Hong Yen, Bac Giang, whatever, they have to stay at home and work online.
This company was established in 2006 in Vietnam with 100% ownership of Mascot International Company, the largest manufacturer of workwear and footwear products in Denmark and one of the largest companies in Europe. To ensure production safety for more than 1,200 workers and employees during the fourth wave of COVID-19 pandemic, the company has implemented very specific solutions.
Không chỉ thực hiện các quy định của cơ quan nhà nước mà chúng tôi còn thực hiện cao hơn một cấp và sớm hơn một bước. Cụ thể là chúng tôi phát khẩu trang y tế miễn phí cho người lao động sử dụng hàng ngày vào buổi sáng trước khi vào làm việc và buổi trưa sau giờ nghỉ ăn trưa. Đối với những người lao động thuộc F3 thì chúng tôi cho người lao động được làm việc tại nhà hoặc là nghỉ ngừng việc hưởng lương. Sau khi trở lại làm việc thì người lao động sẽ được xét nghiệm. Định kỳ hàng tuần thì chúng tôi cũng xét nghiệm sàng lọc cho toàn bộ người lao động để phát hiện sớm những trường hợp nghi nhiễm.
Mascot cũng luôn luôn duy trì việc đào tạo công nhân đa năng, đảm bảo công nhân của chúng tôi có thể làm được nhiều công đoạn khác nhau trên chuyền. Điều này thì giúp chúng tôi vận hành các chuyến may một cách linh hoạt trong trường hợp một số công nhân cư trú tại khu vực phong tỏa không thể đi làm.
These preparations have allowed the company's goods to still reach the European and UK markets despite the ongoing disruption of the global supply chains. This made-in-Hải Dương workwear jacket, worn by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson during his visit to an oil rig in the UK, is an example. This enterprise is just an example of many other businesses in industrial zones in the northern provinces of Vietnam, which were once the pandemic hotspots earlier this year. Now they are recovering. Specifically, exports in July of Bắc Giang province increased by over 92% compared to June, and that of Bắc Ninh is 53%.
Những cái doanh nghiệp như vừa rồi tôi nghĩ là họ tâm thế là Covid sẽ không qua nhanh. Thì tốt nhất là chúng ta vẫn phải sản xuất, chúng ta vẫn phải đầu tư, bởi vì có đi đâu thì nó cũng thế thôi.
Về dài hạn thì đương nhiên là lúc đó là chúng ta sẽ có đủ vaccine. Thì lúc đấy là hoạt động sản xuất kinh doanh thì sẽ an toàn hơn. Và để mà giữ chân các cái nhà đầu tư chất lượng cao, quy mô lớn, thì chúng tôi nghĩ rằng là về mặt chủ trương thì chính phủ Việt Nam là đang đi đúng hướng, tức là đã có những quyết sách rất là quan trọng để bảo vệ cái sức lao động, bảo vệ người lao động. Ví dụ như là đưa các đối tượng công nhân, người lao động vào trong cái danh sách ưu tiên tiêm vaccine. Cái đấy là rất là nhân văn.
Do you think it's sustainable? This strategy is sustainable?
Everybody will agree that when it comes to the 3S concept of staff living and working in the same place, it is not sustainable for a number of reasons. One thing is the company costs, but there's also the human cost. Workers and staff being separated from their families. I mean, they would be willing to do that for some time. If this is implemented over a longer time, people will start leaving.
So are the production activities affected by COVID-19, and did you receive any kind of support from the local authorities and the government?
After the pandemic started showing its ugly face also in Vietnam, the local authorities in Hải Dương, they issued very clear and specific directions to the companies as to what we needed to do if we wanted to continue running our factories. It was very clear, very hands-on. Things became real complicated around Tet this year when Hải Dương became the hotspot. At that point, for a short time, we were asked to implement the 3S management. So I'm now the proud owner of 700 tents. Well, I'm very experienced in dealing with the local authorities because I've done that for a very long time. But I haven't dealt with the army and the police before. That was new territory to me. And you know, they were the guys, you know, standing there right in front of our industrial zone. It was not the local authorities that I'm used to dealing with. And it has worked very well for us indeed. We have lost very, very little production capacity during the entire pandemic. And whatever little we lost, we have compensated for that later on.
Vietnam recorded a positive GDP growth of 5.64% in the first 6 months of 2021, making it among the top in the region. However, the fourth wave of COVID-19 with the Delta variant starting from July has quickly cast its shadow on the business sector. The results of the Business Environment Index survey conducted by the European Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam, published in mid-July 2021, showed that business confidence has declined sharply due to the impact of the fourth wave of COVID-19 pandemic. However, European firms still showed strong confidence in Vietnam's ability to control the pandemic and pull off a strong recovery in the near future in an online conference organized by the Eurocharm in Vietnam on September the 9th.
Nếu mà quy mô mà càng lớn ấy, thì cái thời gian để họ đưa ra quyết định mạnh mẽ về Việt Nam, có nghĩa rằng là cắt bỏ hay là di chuyển ấy, thì sẽ phải càng kéo dài hơn. Đặc biệt là đối với các doanh nghiệp Mỹ và các nhà cung cấp của họ, một khi mà đã chọn Việt Nam làm cái, hay là bất kỳ một thị trường nào làm cái điểm đến cho cái khoản đầu tư của mình, thì họ đã cân nhắc rất kỹ. Cho nên là họ vào thì rất là chậm. Thế nhưng mà họ ở thì cũng rất là lâu, không dễ dàng để ra đi.
Vietnam is becoming a more important piece of the global supply chain, despite the supply chain disruption and shutdown problems facing the country at present. Executive Director of the American Chamber of Commerce in Vietnam, Adam Sitkoff, told Bloomberg. Acknowledging the pandemic is hindering Vietnam from increasing its role in the supply chain, Mr. Adam Sitkoff said he still sees Vietnam as an attractive destination for foreign investment.
Hiện nay thì vẫn còn lựa chọn, vẫn còn cái cơ hội cho Việt Nam để mà giữ chân họ. Đấy, và đấy là cái điều mà không phải chỉ chính phủ đâu, mà cả bản thân chính các doanh nghiệp về cũng đang nỗ lực hết sức.
Đảng, nhà nước và nhân dân ghi nhận những cái đóng góp to lớn của cộng đồng doanh nghiệp. Chính phủ luôn luôn đồng hành, quan tâm, hỗ trợ và giúp đỡ doanh nghiệp những lúc khó khăn. Và chúng ta với tinh thần là lợi ích thì hài hòa và rủi ro thì chia sẻ.
Now, there are some articles saying that with the ongoing fight against COVID-19, especially the Delta variant in Vietnam, maybe the FDI into Vietnam will face some difficulties. What do you think of this opinion?
We have had our own production facilities in Vietnam for almost 2 decades. We don't walk away from that. It doesn't make sense. What makes sense is to get through this, and we will. I understand the frustration, and of course I also share it to a great extent. My question, like you put it yourself so eloquently here, where are they going to go? If you choose the exit strategy, you can be sure about one thing only. That is that you're going to lose $1 million assets. There will be no one to compensate you for whatever you leave behind behind in Vietnam in terms of buildings, machinery, all that you have invested in training and staff. I mean, there's only one thing that makes sense. That is for all of us to hang in there and get through this. The problem that we are facing with supply chains, etc., the root of the problems are not the situation on the ground in Vietnam. We are talking about a regional and global problem. So whatever problems you have in Vietnam, if you leave, your problems will travel with you. So I don't think it's going to happen. What you might see, and I think you have seen a few cases already, is that some companies, they may decide temporarily to suspend production because it's too expensive for them to keep it running under current conditions. But that's not the same as leaving. Keep it between you and me and the viewers. But you know, the major players here in Vietnam, of course they suffer, but they won't go down. The situation for major investors is manageable. Where I see a real big risk that the Vietnamese government is hopefully also addressing is how do you protect all those smaller companies in Vietnam who do not have the resources that the major foreign companies or the big Vietnamese companies do. That's gonna be a huge challenge.
A delegation from the government led by Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính visited and inspected pandemic prevention work and production activities at Samsung Electronics Vietnam's factory in Thái Nguyên province as part of his working visit to the northern province. Reporting to the Prime Minister, Samsung Vietnam's leaders said the company's total investment capital in Vietnam has reached $17.7 billion. When the fourth wave of COVID-19 occurred, the company faced difficulties due to the supply chain being broken as a result of outbreaks in Bắc Giang and Bắc Ninh provinces. However, thanks to the timely direction and support of the government, relevant agencies and local authorities, production has stabilized again and is expected to exceed this year's export plan if Ho Chi Minh City manages to control the disease. Leaders of Samsung Vietnam also suggested that the government will continue to vaccinate workers so that production will not be interrupted. Acknowledging Samsung Vietnam's efforts to overcome difficulties in recent times, Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính emphasized that thanks to the contribution of enterprises including Samsung Vietnam, outbreaks in Bắc Giang and Bắc Ninh provinces have been contained, with production activities returning to normal. The Prime Minister praised Samsung for its long-term investment strategy in Vietnam.
Tôi cũng thể hiện cái sự cảm ơn hợp tác và tin tưởng Samsung vào chính phủ Việt Nam và nhân dân Việt Nam trong cái việc phòng chống dịch bây giờ. Các doanh nghiệp ở nước ngoài hoạt động ở Việt Nam cũng là một bộ phận cấu thành trong bộ phận nhân dân này. Với những cái gì mà Samsung.
Regarding vaccines, the Prime Minister said that the government is prioritizing vaccines for the South as well as workers of Samsung's factory in Ho Chi Minh City. The Prime Minister also asked Samsung to support efforts to import and transfer technology for producing vaccines and medicines for COVID-19. Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính once said that the government of Vietnam is trying to do their best to support businesses, including the FDI sector and also the SME sector here in Vietnam. And he said that the government highly valued the contribution of the business sector. So he hoped that in times of difficulties, the challenges would be shared. What do you think about his opinion?
I agree, we have a shared role, we have a shared responsibility, and most of all, we have a strong mutual interest. There is no adversaries in this situation other than the damned virus. I mean, I am convinced that based on its own interest, the Vietnamese government has no intention whatsoever putting restrictions unnecessarily or keeping them in place longer than absolutely necessary.
Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính also emphasized that trust and also the solidarity of all walks of life is very crucial for the victory of the fight against COVID-19 in Vietnam. What do you think of his opinion?
The Vietnamese government, they have made the decision once and for all that priority number one in dealing with this pandemic is to protect the people. I think is the only priority that really makes sense. The present hardships are absolutely minor compared to what Vietnam went through during 2 generations of war. Prime Minister or the President that said we are all soldiers in the war against COVID. Actually, it's true. And what it translates into is that each and every one of us, we have to deliver on that. That's how we win this war against COVID. It's definitely untrue to spread the rumor that the government, the authorities are doing nothing to or doing nothing efficient to improve the situation. Look at India. Look what has happened in some European countries like Italy, Spain, France, Germany, the UK. Yes, it was a lot better last year. When everybody, admired Vietnam for being such a role model and virtually no COVID impact, and whenever there was a case popping up, it was dealt with very quickly and very efficiently. The fact that the situation in Vietnam now is different, it's because of the new kind of virus we're dealing with. This Delta virus is a problem everywhere. There is only one really efficient means against this virus, and that is vaccination. And numbers are increasing in Vietnam. This is what the government is working for. I was quite surprised to see that Vietnam's Prime Minister even started calling the CEO of AstraZeneca. I believe it's unprecedented. There are a lot of costly problems impeding businesses right now, but I don't see them as a result of wrong government policy or inefficient measures. As I see it, the government and the local authorities, they are doing everything they can to assist all of us. We all hope and pray that they will manage to bring down the numbers in the south with the new steps that have just been taken.
Well, once again, thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
And here's a little update. After our discussion, Mr. Thomas Bo Pedersen also joined a meeting between Eurocharm, European businesses, with Prime Minister Phạm Minh Chính. The meeting showed the government's proactiveness in listening to foreign investors and finding solutions with them. Hopefully, with drastic solutions together, both sides could help each other to get through this difficult time and prosper. And that has also wrapped up this edition of Bizline. Thank you very much for watching. To rewatch our program, you can log on to vtv4.vtv.vn or tune in our YouTube channel at youtube.com/vtv4go. Thanks for watching and goodbye.